Hey folks, this is Richard I. Porter, and I wanted to share with you an idea, not my own, that I've adopted that I think is extremely valuable for thinking through big numbers. Because I think, like a lot of people, when I hear things like million and billion, they sound kind of the same, the words sound similar, and I just start thinking, oh, that's a really big number without really being able to quantify it. That happens a lot when it comes to money, and I think that may be the most useful place to anchor it, although it can also be for other things like API calls or traffic hits to a website or something like that. It's difficult to get your mind around these really big numbers. And so a heuristic that I've found very helpful is to think of it in terms of time. And our brains do a pretty good job of thinking of seconds and converting that into different time frames. And so someone suggested this to me once, and I kind of ran with it. If you think about making $1 a second, it would take, by the time you get up to 1,000 seconds or $1,000, because you're making $1 a second, it's only been 16 minutes by the time you've hit 1,000. By the time you hit 10,000, it's been 3 hours. And by the time you hit 100,000, 100,000, it's been a day, one day. By the time you hit 1,000,000, it's been about 12 days. We're starting to do a little bit of rounding here. And by the time you hit 10 million, it's been 116 days. So not quite a year yet. 100 million, that's about 3 years. Now here's where it's going to kind of blow your mind, and it certainly does mine. By the time you hit 1,000,000,000, it's 32 years. $1 a second. You don't hit 1,000,000,000 until you get to 32 years. And then just to jump straight to 1,000,000,000,000, that's 31,688 years. So for me, that really helps to put it in perspective. And I'm also going to share the chart that I made to support this thinking. It's just a little simple Excel file or an image that you can take a look at. And I think I'll try and cut it together with this video so you can just jump and see it real quick. And wherever I post this, I'll try to post that in some way. Hope that's helpful. It's certainly been useful for me. So here's the file that I made that helps to illustrate what we talked about timescale numbers. And you'll see I've got it from seconds to the most useful quantification, the number of seconds, and then I put a box around minutes, hours, days, and years to try and rapidly orient to what the most useful time frame heuristic is for my mind for understanding what that number is and how big it is. And one other thing that I think is really important here is if we're thinking about this in terms of money, it's very easy to get lost in it, but when you think about earning $1 a second, and not making it to 1,000,000,000 until you hit 32 years. Think about what that means for 100 billion or 150 billion. That's so much time represented there. And another thing that really connects this back into something concrete for me that helps me be grateful for things is to think that all of us, roughly with the time span of our lives these days, if you put it into scale that way, we have, between 2 and 3 billion seconds on this earth. And so, 64 to 96, somewhere in there is probably the amount of time that each of us will spend, unless you subscribe to the idea that you're going to live forever, which is possible, I guess, these days. A lot of people are thinking through how to do that. But that's kind of the point, is most billionaires that have that money, they're somewhere past their first 2 billion seconds usually, or they're certainly approaching it very quickly, 64 years old or so. And nearly all of them would trade nearly all of their money to get another billion seconds. And odds are, if you're watching this and listening to this, that you have at least 1 billion or 2 seconds left in your life. And the idea that a person who has billions and billions and hundreds of billions of dollars would trade all of that in order to have the billion seconds, the 2 billion seconds that you have left, that's a pretty empowering thought. So make the most of your time.